He purchased the handgun that he pointed at and looked at, correct? The 6 Sauer?
Yes.
You had no reason to believe that Mr. Crumbly was buying the firearm for anybody else?
No.
In fact, you said that you called him the younger guy who was there, was standing behind him.
Yes.
Behind Mr. Crumbly, I'm sorry.
Yes.
You didn't see Mr. Crumbly having any conversations with that younger guy prior to you approaching them at the counter, correct?
No.
You later learned that the individual with him was his son.
Yes.
You didn't hear or see his son say anything to Mr. Crumbly about that's the one I want?
No.
In fact, you saw no exchange between them whatsoever?
None.
If the defendant's son would have walked in with the defendant and pointed at that 9mm and said, hey, Dad, that's the one I want, would you have sold it to him?
No.
Whose responsibility it is to actually make the gun safe?
The buyer.
I asked a couple of students what was happening. They didn't know. And then a student came by running and saying, get the hell out of here. And then...
To you?
To anybody. Just announced it in that area.
Did that seem unusual?
Extremely. I went towards the gunfire to see what was happening because I wanted to make sure that our kids were safe. I looked up the hallway and I could see another student look like he was bringing his arm down. My assumption was that that was probably the shooter. The shooter was coming closer to me. As he got very close, I realized it was Ethan, and it didn't seem right to me because Ethan always seemed like a sweet kid. I just couldn't picture that being him, so I talked to him. As he walked by, I asked him if he was okay, what was going on. I took a few steps down the hallway with him.
Did you see that he was holding anything?
Yeah, he had a gun in his hand. He looked away from me, which that made me, I knew for sure that at that point he was the shooter because he would have talked to me.
Why didn't you take cover?
There was a student that needed my help.
Were you alone in that space? Did the shooter pass you by? Did he stop?
He kept walking. I walked with him for just a couple of steps and a few, I don't know, probably, I can't even measure, probably 10 feet. So I turned my back on him. I wasn't sure where he went. He was past me. And then I went back to the student that was on the ground.
Powerful testimony there from someone who was inside of the school responsible for those children and that assistant principal. Was James Crumbly grossly negligent? That's what the Oakland County Assistant Prosecuting Attorney Mark Key said during his opening statement in this case. He said that because James bought the murder weapon for his son just 4 days before this attack, sometimes that's lost, just 4 days before this was purchased. And then the state says he failed to secure it, even though prosecutors say he knew his son was in a downward spiral. Key said this was a nightmare and that it was preventable and foreseeable. Crumbly's defense attorney is pleading ignorance for her client, saying Crumbly didn't know that his son had gained access to that gun, didn't believe there was an immediate and imminent threat of danger. I want to show you some of the video that was played in court. It showed the shooter, the son of the defendant, with the gun.
That's August 19th, 2021. Do you know what he was handling in his hand?
That was a handgun.
A handgun that he told his friend, my dad left it out, so I thought, why not? Now, during Jennifer's trial, she said it was James's responsibility to lock up the guns in their home. Prosecutor Keith said during openings that there was a storage issue and that storage of the gun could have been done by a cable lock.
You see, he was given the tools to make that firearm safe. He was provided a cable lock. It was provided by the manufacturer, by 6 Sauer. It went to the firearm dealer who sold it to James Crumbly. It was for that gun. This is what it looked like the day the gun was purchased, November the 26th, 2021. This is what it looks like now. Still in its original packaging, still with both keys in the lock.
But here's an important question for this jury, and we'll talk more about why it's so important. Who was the last person to have the gun before the shooter took it to the school and opened fire?
This is the last picture that we have of that gun until we see it murder 4 kids on November 30th. And the person holding it is Jennifer Crumbly. She's the last person that we see with that gun. She's the person that said it was in her car, then she said it was in her house, it was her husband's responsibility, it wasn't hers. That's what she told you.
Who bears more responsibility here? Is it the mother or the father? Is it split 50-50? Is it 100% for each of them when it comes to their teenage son? Joining us tonight to talk about this historic trial and the way it's unfolding there in Michigan. From Rogers, Arkansas, host of Hidden Killers podcast, Tony Bruschi is with us, and national trial attorney Michael Jaafar also with us. It's good to have you both on. Let's talk about this case. We've seen everything play out through Jennifer Crumbly's trial. We know how it ends. So the question is it going to be a similar process for this jury in taking in the evidence against James? Michael Jaafar, to you first. Is it as simple as who purchased the gun? Because we saw that today with the clerk on the stand saying that 4 days before this shooting, the name on the receipt for that Sig Sauer is James Crumbly.
You know, Julia, the burden of proof to prove gross negligence is very, very easy once somebody dies. Because people died, overcoming that burden of proof is going to be very, very simple for the prosecution. These school shootings, the mass shootings, they happen to an entire community, and everybody in that community felt it, right? So I think the burden of proof is so easy. I think it's as simple as you bought the gun for your son. 4 days, I mean, that's just a very bad fact for the defense. Terrible fact for the defense. I mean, I could see if you bought it 4 years ago and you had no incident, and then your wife took it out, and then you misplaced it. I could see that, but 4 days, wow, it's just crazy. I think this guy is cooked. The only chance he's got is if he gets lucky and there's a juror in the box that is a rabid gun enthusiast, and he will hang the jury. He's not getting acquitted. I can promise you that. He's not going to get 12 people to say you were not negligent, right? But the only shot he's got is a hung jury. He needs just one juror. I thought the mom would have that. She obviously didn't. So I don't think he's going to have that, but that's his only shot, Julia. I do believe it's as simple as he bought the gun. It's done.
Michael, that gift part of this. Now, we know that the clerk said, the one who was there at the gun store said that she didn't know that this was a purchase for a child, that there are signs in the gun store that say you can't purchase this firearm for other people. I don't know, the defense really can't get around that it seemed to be a gun for their child, but is that saying that a parent can't purchase a gun and it essentially be for the enjoyment, even if it's for hunting, of their child?
I agree with you, Julia, and it's so extreme that even if they were able to do it, once you adopt that type of risk, it's not like they bought him a toy and he used that toy and stabbed somebody with it. They bought him the most powerful weapon available to humankind, right? A handgun. You could murder anybody. You could murder an elephant by just a little tiny kid could shoot an elephant and kill the elephant by just holding the handgun. It's a different thing. If my kids take my car keys, I have kids under 10. If they take my car keys and they get in my car when I go to sleep and they run somebody over, it's a different thing than if you have a gun. A gun is different, and the timing is awful. So I fully agree that they are, by virtue of buying that gun for their kid and not securing it, gross negligence is going to be an easy burden to meet.
I'm glad you mentioned that about a different possible scenario with the cars. I'm wondering what a verdict in this case could impact if there's not a school shooting, if there's not a gun. Does it still put more responsibility on parents in protecting others from their child? I want to play something, though, that could help the defense in James Crumbly's case, and that's what the foreperson said at the end of Jennifer's trial. Let's take a moment back to a look at the forewoman.
Was there something specific that really stuck that you guys were debating over for that many hours?
The thing that really hammered it home is that she was the last adult with the gun.